Welcome in. Jesse Schule here from jesseschule.com. Today we're talking Wild Card Weekend, and I got picks for every game on the board. Last week, final week of the regular season, I gave out picks for every game on the board. On Sunday, we went 9-5 overall with those picks, and we swept with our player prop bets on Sunday. So we've incorporated a few more player props into today's picks. And let's get right to it with the first game on the board. We're looking at the Cleveland Browns on the road, laying a couple points at Houston. A lot of people scratching their heads, wondering how Houston could be a home dog. But Houston's got a rookie quarterback, and they're going up against a Cleveland team that has found their stride since the arrival of Joe Flacco, former Super Bowl champion Joe Flacco, who comes in averaging over 300 passing yards per game so far. And that's where we're going to look for this game is the passing yards for C.J. Stroud. The total is set at 247.5. That looks a little optimistic against the number one ranked Cleveland passing defense. Cleveland only allowed 165 passing yards per game during the regular season. And a rookie going up against that defense in his first ever playoff game. If I was DeMeco Ryans, I'd probably try to protect my quarterback a little bit, run the ball a little bit more, ease him into the game. And 247.5 just looks like a big number. So we're going under 247.5 passing yards for C.J. Stroud. Moving on, we're looking at the Miami Dolphins on the road at Kansas City. It's supposed to be sub-zero temperatures, one of the coldest playoff games ever. That's not the big issue for the Miami Dolphins, although that probably is an issue. They're banged up. Both corners are questionable. Both safeties are questionable. They lost Bradley Chubb a couple weeks ago. Then last week they lose Van Ginkel. The majority of their offense is also listed as questionable. And as bad as Kansas City's offense looked this year, Patrick Mahomes still played relatively well. You take away a lot of those drops. There was some bad bounces. You look at that loss to Philly on that controversial call. I think Kansas City is probably a little bit better than the markets have them priced here. And this one is going up. So I'm going to recommend getting in soon. Right now, Kansas City -4.5. Wouldn't surprise me if it's -5.5 by game time. So all in here with Kansas City at the best price you can get. Let's move on to the next game. We're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Buffalo Bills. The Bills laying 10.5. The total is only 35.5. Bad weather game here as well. Probably worse than Kansas City with wind and really challenging conditions. Buffalo, a double-digit favorite, but Pittsburgh with Mason Rudolph at quarterback. I know Mike Tomlin's got that streak of no losing seasons. Pittsburgh makes the playoffs. It's almost like they've won something by getting here, and this looks like a bit of a letdown spot for the Steelers. I'm not about to lay 10.5 in a bad weather game, though. The bet I've got lined up here is I got Josh Allen over 38.5 rushing yards. And given the bad weather, it might take away some passing opportunities for Allen. We know he likes to play hero ball. I like him to tuck that ball and run for over 38.5 yards against this Pittsburgh defense. That's the play for this Buffalo-Pittsburgh game. Moving on, we're going to Big D, the Green Bay Packers at the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys laying 7.5 and the total of 50.5. So last week I gave out a prop bet on Tony Pollard, who I mentioned was very disappointing this season. He needed right around 70 yards to reach the 1,000-yard mark for the season, which he did last year as the backup running back and could barely do it as the primary back for the Cowboys this season. Anyways, we bet over 63.5 rushing yards last week against Washington. He got there, 17 carries for 70 yards. I've mentioned that McCarthy hasn't really leaned on the running game enough for my liking. We're in the playoffs now, so hopefully he's a little wiser with his running back, utilizes them a little bit more. And the rushing yards total this week is a little lower than it was last week, just 61.5 yards for Pollard. I will say that he was facing a Washington defense that allows 126 rush yards per game last week. This week he faces a Packers rushing defense that allows 128 yards per game. Favorable matchup for Pollard. Dallas is supposed to win this game and rather comfortably. We should expect a decent workload for Pollard, and he should go over that 63.5. And we got a couple games left on the schedule. Moving on, we got the Rams at Detroit. The Lions, a 3-point favorite, hosting a playoff game. A lot of people probably never thought they'd see the day. The Detroit Lions at home as a favorite in the playoffs. What stands out to me in this game is the total, 51.5. It's expected to be a shootout. And anytime you see a game where there's expected to be a lot of points scored, I see increased value on anytime touchdown scores. And the guy I'm looking at is a former Super Bowl MVP, Cooper Kupp, plus money to score a touchdown in this game. He's finally healthy and he's coming on, and this looks like a good spot for Cooper Kupp to get in the end zone against a Detroit Lions team that can give up some points. So we'll take Cooper Kupp plus 120 to score a touchdown against the Lions. And the final game on Wild Card Weekend, we're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay catching 3 points at home, the total at 44. This is a tough one because both teams are banged up. The Eagles have lost 5 of 6 games. They look atrocious. Their defense is really struggling. But Baker Mayfield's banged up. He was injured again. He already came into that game against Carolina with sore ribs. Then he suffers a lower body injury. I don't know how healthy Baker is. And because of that, I'm looking at the primary running back for Tampa Bay, Rachaad White, anytime touchdown. You don't have to lay too much for that. I think the price is around 125. I think that's just a great matchup at home against this Philly defense that hasn't really been able to stop anybody. And maybe we'll see a little bit more running plays with Baker banged up. We don't expect him to be dropping back and airing it out if he's not 100%. So we'll go with Rachaad White to score an anytime touchdown against these struggling Eagles. And that wraps up every game on the board for Wild Card Weekend. By the way, the banner at the bottom of the screen for a limited time at jesseschule.com. You can get 50% off all my college basketball picks for the rest of the season. Why should you be interested in that? Well, I'm creeping up the leaderboards right around the top 5 at Sports Camping and jesseschule.com. And number 2, just so close to Ross Benjamin at gamblersworld.net. So if you got $99 in your pocket, you come see me at jesseschule.com. You'll be glad that you did.